The vast majority of countries in the world are not doing what Mr. Trump is doing. Do you really want to impose tariffs that destroy the alliances you need to depend on?
Richard Wolff declares that this tariff mistake will destroy America for decades, crippling trade, raising costs, and isolating the US in a world that's already moving on.
Now the government is stuck. What is it going to do? And the answer is it's going to find people that the Republican Party doesn't like. And it's going to find a way to tax them. And that's what's interesting about the new big Trump ugly tax law. Let's take a look. The tariff. The tariffs are the big thing that's new in the world of the government taxing. But of course, it really isn't new. Tariffs have been part of American history from the beginning. But tariffs are now important because it's the only way left for the government to raise some money. And let's see who will end up paying it.
A tariff is a tax on imported goods, and it's paid by the American businesses that bring those goods in, not the foreign producers.
A tariff is a tax on goods that are brought in to the United States. They have to be paid by the businesses who bring in goods. You know, Walmart that brings in the goods that you can buy at the Walmart store, or Amazon that collects goods from around the world and then shovels them to you. All the companies that make things in America that have parts that have to be brought from around the world. For example, all of our automobile companies, all of our appliance companies, those that we have left. So it's companies, American companies, that bring the goods in, and foreign companies who have operations here who bring the goods in. Those companies pay Uncle Sam the tariff. But now here comes the good or the horrible news, depending on whether you're a corporation or a worker.
Large numbers of coffee shops are expected to suffer business losses due to Trump's tariffs, since higher import costs on goods like beans and machines.
And that means large numbers of coffee shops are going to suffer a loss of business. For many of them, since the profit margin is thin in a coffee shop, they're going to go out of business, which means they'll pay fewer taxes. And when they lay off workers, those laid off workers will be paying lower taxes because their income is. Those are all subtractions from whatever money the government gets from the tariff on Brazil. It comes out of you, it comes out of me, and it bites back. Let me give you a more important example. Over recent years and months, the price of ice cream has gone way up. Here we are in the middle of summer. People normally eat ice cream. It's becoming more expensive. It rose, for example, over the last year by several times the rate of inflation of average goods and services. Ice cream, like coffee, is becoming expensive, and so people are economizing on it. Now, even more important example, the has pit the United States mostly against Russia. The United States tried to get the European countries to be allied in this against Russia. And the Russians, for their part, tried to get an alliance going with China, India, And that group of countries, that growing group of countries known as the BRICS.
Trump's tariffs ended up helping Russia, because as US goods got more expensive, other countries turned to Russia instead, building stronger ties.
Russia has been helped in building a powerful alliance by Mr. Trump's tariffs. Why? Because the countries that are hurt because the goods they want to send to America are costing more because the U.S. government taxes them, that's what the tariffs do, are making the logical business decision. Send fewer goods to the United States. Send your products to other countries that don't have a tariff, that do not have a Mr. Trump raising tariffs all the time, have nothing like it. The vast majority of countries in the world are not doing what Mr. Trump is doing. In fact, none of them, not a one, is doing it. So countries are upset with what the United States is doing, trying to improve its own economy at the expense of everybody else. Oh, you can call it Make America Number One, but the rest of the world understands it as a hostile economic hurt imposed on them. And they don't like it, and they don't want it. And one of the ways to deal with it is to sell your products somewhere else. And so they are working with one another. That's why BRICS is increasing its power, its size, and its economic clout. In sharp contrast, because Mr. Trump has imposed tariffs on Mexico, Canada, and the Europeans, the alliance of the United States used to be called the Group of Seven, the G7, United States, Canada, Japan, Britain, France, Italy, and Germany, are at each other's throats, heaving tariffs against one another.
Now the Europeans, Canadians, and Mexicans are firing back, angry at Trump's tariffs and hitting the US with their own, turning trade into a showdown.
The Europeans responding angrily to Mr. Trump. The Canadians responding angrily to Mr. Trump. The Mexicans responding angrily to Mr. Trump. You think it's smart in a world where a whole nother economic power competitor has arisen, the People's Republic of China? Do you really want to impose tariffs that destroy the alliances you need to depend on? That's an example of the tariffs biting back. Let me conclude by explaining. The United States' empire, as we have been charting, is declining. And with it, the U.S. economy, which depends on that empire in a lot more ways than most Americans are willing to admit. Imposing tariffs may feel good, may work a nice story under the slogan, America First, but it is producing consequences that make the United States weaker, not stronger, that question the dollar more, not less, that bring our enemies, nationally speaking, to be stronger and our allies weaker, at least those that are counted enemies and counted allies by those who lead the United States. Tariffs are a really bad idea, and whatever benefit politically Mr. Trump can get by brandishing them around as the hot new weapon to dump on the world every day, the reaction to it, the hostility and bitterness and anger it is driving the world to feel, is a very dangerous way of trying to solve an economy's problems. We can and we should do much better. This is a terrible economic policy, but you now understand the logic. If you didn't have a society in which a tiny minority own and operate the productive businesses of the country, you wouldn't put them in a position to make this kind of abomination into the policy of a government.
Richard Wolff says the bad news just hit hard. Trump has lost control of the economic story. And now the consequences are playing out in full public view.
I call this imposing tariffs, firing Fed workers, because those are the two key parts of his program you should keep in mind. So let's begin. What's the problem Mr. Trump is trying to solve? And I don't, by speaking this way, mean to suggest that he's clearly focused on economics. He's not. That he clearly understands what the situation is. Looks like he doesn't. That he has a strategy, not much of one, but then again, not zero.
Trump's facing real economic trouble, and he knows it. The federal budget is the ticking bomb his team is scrambling to defuse.
He does have real economic problems. His advisors for sure tell him about it, and he has to do something. So here's the problem that they are focusing him on. It's called the federal budget. It's the relationship of how much money the federal government takes in taxes versus how much it spends on everything from fighting to helping Social Security to helping colleges and universities, although Mr. Trump, is trying to cut that back. And the difference between what the government spends and what it takes in taxes, it has to borrow. If it spends more than it takes in taxes, it has to borrow. Just like you and I, if we spend more than we take in our wages and salaries and other incomes, we have to borrow. And the government borrows also. In recent years, it's been borrowing tons. Why is that? Well, the major reason is there are two huge expenses that have gotten worse over the last decade.
The first major blow to the federal budget, Trump's massive tax cut for corporations and the rich, one of the biggest in history, and a fiscal wound still bleeding.
The first problem of our government's budget is the tax cut that Mr. Trump, during his first presidency, gave to corporations and the rich. One of the biggest tax cuts in history given to corporations and the rich, even though they had just come off 30 years of redistributing income from the bottom and the middle to the top. Never did those people need a tax cut less. Mr. Trump gave it to them anyway because he wanted and got their support in exchange. No mystery why in recent years the government has borrowed trillions of dollars. What's the problem? You can't keep doing that. You know why? Because the ratio of the debt of the United States relative to our economy and what it can produce has become unsustainable. We produce somewhere around $28 trillion of goods and services a year, but we are now in debt 35 trillion. Our debts are outrunning our economy more and more each year. And why is that a problem? Because our creditors are getting nervous. They're getting nervous that the debt we have is so costly, because remember, the government has to pay interest to whoever lends money to the United States. The more the United States borrows, the more interest it has to pay. And so that's what he's doing. He's trying to cut back on government spending, and he's trying to raise taxes because that's the way he can reduce the amount the government has to borrow. How is he lowering government spending? Well, that's where Elon Musk comes in. His job is to fire huge numbers of people who work for the federal government, Fed workers, to cut back on their budgets. Firing them becomes the way to cancel the programs that they had been hired to administer. So it's a way of cutting government spending on foreign aid, on our veterans, on everything the government does with a hatchet, or with Mr. Musk, a chainsaw.
Trump is effectively raising taxes through tariffs, a concealed form of taxation that shifts the burden onto consumers, cloaked in the rhetoric of economic nationalism, but felt in rising prices and strained supply chains.
And the other thing he's doing is raising taxes. Which taxes? Tariffs. Tariffs are a tax. He's raising the tariffs because he wants taxes to go up, because we are all going to have to pay higher prices for what comes into this country, because in addition to paying for the object that comes in, we now have to pay Uncle Sam the tariff, the tax on top of it. So we're being asked to pay more taxes while the government does much less for us. And that's Mr. Trump's solution to the problem. And you should understand that this is remarkable. Republicans used to be against solving problems by raising taxes. Now they're in the forefront of doing it big time. And we are all going to pay. We're going to lose the services we counted on from the government, many of them, and we're going to be paying more for almost everything we buy because tariffs raise the prices of nearly everything. This is a terrible economic policy, but you now understand the logic. And don't miss the crucial point, because if you get this, you'll understand not just the moment we're in, but the whole capitalist system.
This tariff program is engineered for the benefit of corporations and the wealthy, a policy that poses as protectionism but funnels profit upward while offloading the cost onto working Americans.
This program is a program designed for corporations and the rich. They don't care if the prices go up, because that's what it means to be a corporation or to be rich. If you're rich, paying an extra 10% for everything that you buy, or 20%, what's the difference? You're rich. You could care less. And if you're a corporation, all you do is raise your prices to offset anything you have to pay more for that goes into your business. Because you're an employer, you're in a position to raise prices. For those of us who aren't employers, that's 97% of the American people, we can't do that. We're not in a position to set prices. So corporations and the rich are the winners. They're exempted from the suffering. They're going to solve the economic problems created by corporations and the rich, caused by their investment policies. They're moving production overseas. They're gouging profits by jacking up prices already. All of that, which has produced our economic difficulties, is quietly hidden. And Mr. Trump, like the people who run the Republican and the Democratic parties, has come up with a really odd way of solving a problem. But it isn't so odd once you understand that he solved the problem the way our leaders always do. Fixing the mess made by corporations and the rich on our backs, on the backs of the people, of all the tens and hundreds of thousands losing their federal jobs, starting to look in the private sector where the rest of us work and pushing down wages and working conditions as they are desperate to find work, taxing us in the form of the higher prices we're going to have to pay. That's how they're going to solve the problem. That's the way they do. That's how capitalism works. The root problem here, it isn't the imports, it isn't the tariffs, it isn't even firing these workers. The problem here is capitalism. If you didn't have that kind of problem, if you didn't have a society in which a tiny minority own and operate the productive businesses of the country, you wouldn't put them in a position to make this kind of abomination into the policy of a government.